Hi, this is Dr. Burton. Welcome back. And I want to do a couple follow-up comments from the last couple videos I made. The last couple videos were questions about clarity and 3 arguments for the principle of clarity. And these were responses to questions that came up in my locals community. You can see that address there if you want to join our conversation. So what happened after I posted these 2 videos was that there were questions about my conclusion. So in the arguments for the principle of clarity at the end, well, let's just review it. It said some things are clear to reason. The basic things are clear, and the basic things are about God and man and good and evil. And those things are clear to reason. And so I felt like the comment was prove it. And I'm not sure they meant prove that those things are the basic things or prove it that God exists, but I'm going to try to do both. Again, I can't prove it to you. I can present to you the reasons, and you can weigh them, assess them, and either assent to them or reject them. And if you reject them, then you should provide your counter argument. Okay, so again, an argument is where you provide premises that logically support a conclusion. And I think I did that in the previous video. Today, I'm going to present a series of arguments: premise, premise, conclusion, reasons for the minor premise. I believe all the arguments that I'm presenting are valid arguments. Your job is to test these arguments for soundness. Soundness means an argument has is in good form, it's valid, and the premises are true. So a sound argument, the conclusion of a sound argument is necessarily true, okay? And we should, if we're rational, consent to truth. Okay, so this video may go kind of long. I'm not going to limit myself to 20 minutes this time. I'm just going to talk, and it may be a long video. And sometimes people like long videos. All right, so prove it. First, prove why are the basic things about God and man and good and evil. So I kind of ran through it quickly in the previous video. And I said this, what's the most basic thing you can say about this pencil or anything? The most basic thing you can say about this water. The most basic thing you can say about this person. The most basic thing we can say about anything is that it exists. And if it exists forever, always, or it exists not always, temporally. So this pencil is temporal. It was made in a factory, probably in China, and it will probably deteriorate one day. So always is eternal. Eternal is no beginning and no end. Not always is temporal. It had a beginning, minimally. And some things could be temporal and not have an end, like everlasting. So eternal is forever in both directions. No beginning, no end. Temporal is at least had a beginning, possibly doesn't have an end. That's a different discussion. Okay, so why say the basic things are about God and man and good and evil? But we'll start with God. Because in the conversation we were having, I said that there are 2 options on the square of opposition. Either all is eternal, every single thing has no beginning and no end, or only some things are eternal. And those some things would be God. And what we mean by God is minimally an eternal, infinite, eternal, unchangeable creator. And this God creates all that is non-eternal. So if there are finite things in the world, it would come from the creator. Okay, so all is eternal is the view that says every single thing that exists is always been here, always will be, no beginning, no end, or only some is eternal. That's God, the creator, is eternal. Everything else is temporal. So we have these 2 concepts: eternal, no beginning and no end; temporal, has a beginning. And now we're going to add a couple more concepts: matter and spirit. And matter is that which has size. It takes up space, it can be measured, and is not conscious. So has size, not conscious. And people will start thinking about things like, what about energy? Energy is an aspect of matter. Energy can be measured. Energy takes up space. What about dark matter? Let's put dark matter over here for now. It's an aspect of matter. Spirit, though, or sometimes people call it mind or soul or consciousness. These are different words for the reality of a being that has no size but is conscious. Now, we're so trained to be materialist in our culture that we go, wait a minute, how can you have being that has no size? How can you have being that it can't be sensed? Most of the world has believed in this reality, except for maybe the academy and I don't know, atheists over the last 200 years. So spirit is a definite aspect of reality that philosophers discuss, consciousness, mind, and we can have a conversation about why those terms change, but it's different words for the same reality, and that reality is conscious. It's a thinking thing. It is self-aware. And if God, the creator, exists, God would be that kind of being. Now, maybe you're saying, oh, you're assuming that again. I'll try to argue for that as we go along. Okay, so we have eternal and temporal and matter and spirit. We're going to put those together and see what are the options for explaining what exists eternally. But first, we should probably argue that there must be something eternal. So let's do that argument. There must be something eternal. Now I'm going to go over to a little handout that I put together. Again, I'm taking these arguments from Mr. Gangadine's book, Philosophical Foundation. I meant to have that with me. That's why I'm hesitating. It's back here. Philosophical Foundation, a critical analysis of basic belief. And these arguments come from that book. I've just put them together in one handout. I was teaching at a private Christian university. I needed a quick reference, so I put this together for them, and this handout kind of just stuck. I kind of like it. So we're going to go over several parts in this handout. You'll see there's some preliminaries, which I may have just gone over without even knowing it. And then we're going to argue that there must be something eternal. Then we're going to argue that matter exists, matter's not eternal, the soul exists, and the soul is not eternal. And then we're going to conclude, therefore, God exists. So that's the outline of where we're going. You can see this is kind of a lengthy handout. So we're going to have a lengthy conversation today. All right, so let me flip over to that view. And let's get rid of this for now. All right, so this is the argument for God the Creator. So we've talked about this. All right, so here are the steps we need to go through. If God the Creator exists, then the following needs to be shown. And you should watch me at every step. There must be something eternal. Okay, we need to do that argument. Matter exists. Matter is not eternal. The soul exists. The soul is not eternal. So let's start with some preliminaries. We can assume that something exists. I mean, we're talking, right? Something appears to something. I'm a something. There's something out there. So we can assume that something exists. I think that's self-evident. And there are two kinds of existence posited by philosophers, matter and spirit. We just went over that. Matter has size and is not conscious. Spirit, also called mind, soul, spirit, or consciousness, has no size and is conscious. And there hasn't been a third option. If you want my argument that there's no third option, you can sign up for my logic class at Logos College of Liberal Arts. I will put the link in the description below. Take my logic class and see my very nice, beautiful argument that there's no third option. But you guys don't get that here because it'll be so long. All right, so there's either matter or spirit or both. And what exists is either matter or spirit or both matter and spirit. And if something is eternal, it has no beginning and no end. What is eternal is independent, self-existing, self-maintaining, and self-explaining. So these are further definitions of eternality, or a being that is eternal. So it's independent. Whatever is eternal cannot depend on anything else as a source of its existence. It has to keep itself going. It's self-existing. It's self-maintaining. It doesn't end. It doesn't begin. Now, I sometimes have students asking questions about, can eternal die? No, then it's not eternal. Can something like have no beginning and be eternal? No. Can something have a beginning and be eternal? No, because if it has a beginning, it's temporal. So it has to keep itself going, self-maintaining, and self-explaining. There's no other being outside of itself that can point to it and say, this is the source of its existence. So it is self-explanatory. It is eternal. Okay. So what is the argument that there must be something eternal? Now, if we were in the classroom, I'd put the square of opposition up on the board. Over here would be all is eternal. Here would be none is eternal. Here would be some is eternal. Here would be some is not eternal. We want to show some is eternal by showing none is eternal. None is eternal is false. So you have to use this reductio ad absurdum form of argument. All right, so let's read through it. The contradictory, nothing is eternal, is self-contradictory by reductio argument. All right, if nothing is eternal, if there's no being anywhere that is eternal, then everything that exists is temporal. Every single thing had a beginning. And if everything is temporal, then everything had a beginning. And if everything had a beginning, then being would have come from non-being. Why? Because the very first thing came into being, but it came into being from no previous being. Since being from non-being violates the law of identity, this is impossible. Therefore, nothing is eternal is impossible, and some is eternal must be true. All right, so let's think about what being is and what non-being is, if we could say anything about it. So being is that which exists. It has properties. It has qualities. It has the property of continuation, at least into the next moment. So if it bees, it exists, okay? So what would non-being be? Is it anything? Non-being doesn't exist, has no properties, has no power to be into the next moment. So non-being is nothing. It's worse than nothing, because some scientists talk about the universe coming from nothing, and what they mean by nothing is a something. It's something like quantum foam or something. So non-being is no being, no thing. So you can't get a thing being from no thing, non-being. It's impossible. It is logically and metaphysically impossible. And if you want to argue with me on that, go back and watch my videos on reason and violating the laws of thought, because this would violate the law of identity. Being is being. Being is not non-being. All right. I know some people are going to want to argue with me on this one. Do me a favor. Think this through for at least 24 hours after you listen to this or watch this video. Think it through before you react. Don't react. Just think it through and see, do I understand it first? You might just not like it. And that's an emotional response. I want a logical response. If you understand it and you see a flaw with it, drop me a line and let me know where. All right. I'm looking for a pause button. I don't see a pause button. So we're just going to keep going. We might have a distracting puppy in the background, but that's okay. We're just going to keep going. Okay, so we have something must be eternal. Now this something, so we have some is eternal is here. All is eternal is here. All may include some. So maybe everything is eternal, including the something that this argument got to. Or maybe some is eternal and some is not eternal, because these two on the bottom are called subcontraries. They could both be true together. So we're going to combine some is with some is not to give us only some is eternal versus all is eternal. So now we have a contradiction. Everything is eternal, or only some things are eternal. Some is and some is not. And we don't know which of these is true at this point. So we have to look at our options. And up here in all is eternal, it could be that all exists and all is matter. This is called material monism. Maybe matter is eternal. Or the opposite, maybe all that exists is eternal and it is spirit. This is called spiritual monism, which would negate the reality of matter. Matter excludes spirit. Material monism excludes spirit. Spiritual monism excludes matter. So they're opposites. And then there's dualism, which says matter and spirit are co-eternal. So at this point, we have all the possibilities, all the logical options. Matter is eternal, spirit's eternal, they're both eternal, or some is eternal and some is not eternal. And we have to look at each one of those. And in order to get only some is eternal or God the creator, to get that as true, as clear, as necessary, we have to eliminate all is eternal. We have to eliminate these options. So we're going to start with matter. Does matter exist? Is it possible that what you are observing is an illusion? This is something that Descartes played with. He thought perhaps an evil demon was deceiving him into believing that all that comes in through his senses is reality. And so he did something called systematic doubt, where he went through and doubted what his senses delivered to him. He also doubted things like testimony of other people, tradition. He wanted to know what he could, he wanted to see what he could know certainly. I'm not sure that's the tact we want to take here, but this is an argument that could have ruled out his evil demon. It can also rule out things like we are in the matrix, or maybe God is deceiving us, or God is we're in the mind of God, or perhaps Brahman in Eastern religion is thinking us. So there are a lot of views that say matter does not exist. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, that movie is trying to say we're in a virtual reality. I think a lot of people play with that right now. Are we in a virtual reality? Can we tell the difference between virtual reality and the physical world? So this is an argument that's meant to address those questions. I think this is a really beautiful argument. It's one of my favorites. You can see that there is a structure to this argument. There's a major premise, two sub-arguments, a minor premise, and a conclusion. And so I don't think there's any other preliminaries. I think I'm just going to launch into the argument. I want you to think it through, listen to it before you react. A lot of people like to go, but wait. Did you consider this? I probably have. I've been teaching this for at least 20 years, probably 5 times a semester. So I think I've heard the possible objections, but if you think you have a new one, drop me a line. All right, so here it is. The cause of what I see. Okay, we can do one preliminary. We can agree that something is causing the appearance before us. Something appears to me. There's a cause, because there's no uncaused events. Something is causing the appearance of things. The cause of what I see is either my mind, I'm imagining it, I'm thinking it, I'm creating it, another mind, Descartes' evil demon, the Matrix, God, Brahman, or it is outside of all minds and really exists. So if you think about this, it's another version of mind or matter. The cause of what I see is either mind or it's matter. And if it's mind, it could be mind or another mind. And if it's not mind, then it's matter. And if it's matter, then it's really there. Okay, so that's the major premise. Usually a major premise in an argument is not controversial. I don't think this one's controversial. So think it through. Now I'm putting the sub-arguments here. They really should go under the minor premise, but I like a little element of surprise, so I'm putting them here. The sub-argument 1. If the cause of what I see is my mind, I'm thinking it, I'm creating it, I'm imagining it, then I would have total control over what I see next. If I'm creating it, can't I create anything I want? I don't have total control over what I see next. Think about it. Do you really? Um, if I did, I'd be doing this on a beach, and maybe I wouldn't even need a camera. I could just think this right into your mind. Um, in fact, I don't even know if I'd have you on my island without my camera. I would just be there thinking things. I wouldn't have to read books either. I could just like have it in here. But I don't have that kind of control, right? I don't have total control, all control over what I see next. Maybe I have a little bit of control, but not all control. Therefore, the cause of what I see is not my mind. All right, so notice again, we're playing with these categories of all, some, none, the square of opposition. So we're going through our logical options. So it's my mind, and if it's my mind, total control. I don't have total control, so the cause of what I see, what's appearing to me, is not my mind. Think it through. Let me know. I don't know. Maybe you want to play with that. Maybe you want to go around experimenting. Is it the case that I don't have total control? Maybe she's wrong. Maybe I do have total control over what I see next. I don't know. I feel quite limited in what I can see next. Okay, sub-argument 2. If the cause of what I see is another mind, Brahman, the evil demon, the Matrix, God, then I would have no control over what I see next. See this? The first argument, all control. This one is no control. Is it the case that you have no control over what you see next? I don't think so. I have some control over what I see next. For example, I can say, I'm going to intend to turn around and look at my books. And then I can turn around and look at my books. I have some control over what I see next. I can look over there and see Dusty on the chair. So I do have some control. Maybe I can't, see beyond these four walls, but I do have some control over what I see next. Therefore, the cause of what I see is not another mind. Now, this is where I hear a little objection sometimes. I hear people say, but wait, Dr. Burton, maybe you are in the Matrix. And when you say, I'm going to turn around and look at my books, somebody's feeding that thought into your mind already through the computer virtual reality. So you think you're intending, but really that is also being fed into you by the person who is controlling the, I don't know, operating system or whatever. In my class at school, it was you're a brain in a vat being stimulated by an evil scientist to have the experiences you're having right now. So your brain's in this jar, it's connected to electrodes, it's connected to the computer program that says simulate YouTube experience or something like that. So you think, oh, I'm going to turn around and look at my books, but really they're making you do that. All right, let's think about that. Is that true? Can the, I don't know, evil scientist who has my brain in a vat also feed in my intentions, program my intentions? So let's think about that. Either my intentions are my own intentions and they're self-certifying, like I know that I'm intending when I turn it, I can't doubt that I intended to look at my books. Or my intentions are not mine. They're programmed in, which makes me wonder then what am I? If I have no intentions and I'm completely programmed, I'm not a person, right? And if I'm not a person, I have no free will and I have no ability to ask the question, does God exist? That's not my question, right? So I'm going to say that we have intentions, that we have the ability to intend to look around, intend to change what we're focused on, is proof that there is me, and I I do have some control over what I see next. So let's go back to this argument here. I don't, okay. Sorry, I'm still getting used to using this platform here. Okay. So the cause of what I see is not another mind. Okay, here, let's go to the minor premise. The cause of what I see is not my mind, given the subargument 1, and it's not another mind, given subargument 2. Therefore, here's the big conclusion. The cause of what I see is outside of all minds and really exists. Okay, so if another mind's not causing what I see, my mind's not causing what I see, then matter is causing what I see, and we've just gotten to the material world. Now, you can say this is an argument for realism, the reality of the physical world. This is an argument that allows us to do science and study the physical world and not have to doubt, am I doing science in a matrix? I mean, maybe you are. Maybe you still want to think it through. But consider this an argument for realism. It's an argument that matter exists. And where do we go after this argument? We are going to go to the argument that matter is not eternal. So we sort of went, okay, this is a shortcut through spiritual monism. If we wanted to, we could go into the nitty-gritty of spiritual monism and talk about their philosophies and show where the philosophies end with giving up reason, end with appeal to an unknown being from non-being. I'm not going to do that in this video, but again, I invite you to read Philosophical Foundation. There's a really lengthy, beautiful conversation in there about spiritual monism, 3 different philosophies it goes through. Okay, so matter is not eternal. Let's look at that argument next and see why not. Because this is the dominant philosophy of our day, that matter is eternal. So this philosophy was something that the ancient Greek philosophers first believed. Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes. I write about these in my book, Retrieving Knowledge, how this worldview, a materialist worldview coupled with empiricism, all of our knowledge is through the senses, leads to skepticism. We can't have knowledge, and that led to sophism in the ancient world. Then I argue we're going through the same thing today. So philosophers, I think in the modern period it started to go this way, particularly with the wars of religion, where theists were fighting with each other. The philosophers said, hey, let's do this thing where we keep our religion private. Doctrine divides, let's keep it private. And let's just have God as the ground for morality and the source of existence, and go from there. Well, that led to further unraveling in deism. Well, maybe God's all that we need. We don't need scripture at all. And this deism erodes to materialism. Why do we even need God? We have science that can explain the existence of the world, and science can explain everything. And then the postmodern era continued that. Nietzsche says God is dead. He was a diehard materialist in the Heraclitean way, meaning all that exists is matter, and matter is in motion. There are no fixed beings. There's no fixed essence. There's no forms. There's no logos. And postmodernism continues that. And here we are today. And some people want me to do some videos on the metaphysics of critical theory. That's it. The metaphysics of critical theory is there's only matter. Humans are material beings. When you're dead, you're dead. That's it. Politics is power struggle. All is power struggle, even in the physical world. So Nietzsche says you should be the superhuman, the Übermensch. We don't really like that today. That's too individualistic. We're going in a more collectivist way. And so we go with Marx, who was also a materialist. So that's a little bit of background. But what's wrong with that view? Matter is eternal and matter is all that exists. Is that true? Is it possible? Let's think it through. I didn't drink. This is a nice, beautiful little argument. Premise, conclusion. It is a valid argument form. Modus tollens is the argument form. If the material world were eternal, it would be self-maintaining. Why? Because anything that is eternal is self-maintaining. What that means is matter, atoms, protons, electrons, neutrons, and then the quantum world would keep itself going. Okay, if the material world were eternal, it would be self-maintaining. Okay, think that through. That's the major premise. The minor premise is that the material world is not self-maintaining. And we'll give reasons for saying that. We're not just going to assert it. We'll give reasons, 3 reasons for the minor premise. So it's almost like the minor premise is controversial. You want proof for that. You got it. Conclusion, the material world is not eternal. Okay. If the material world were eternal, it would be self-maintaining. It's not self-maintaining, therefore it's not eternal. That's a valid argument. Is it sound? Are the premises true? Let's look at this. The major premise assumes that there must be something eternal, which we just argued for previously, and what is eternal is not dependent on anything for its continuing existence. And if all is matter, then matter must be eternal. Okay, so I don't think there's anything controversial here. Second, if something is self-maintaining, it will continue without any change, or if it changes, it is a matter of recycling. Okay, so matter can't begin and it can't end if it's eternal. This needs to be stated. There are no unique events in an eternal being, meaning no unique starts or finishes. So it can't be eternal and then end. If you want an explanation about why, sign up for my Philosophy 101 class and go through that conversation in the discussion about eternal being. Logos College of Liberal Arts. I will put the link down below. Okay, so what's the reason for the minor premise? Remember the minor premise. Material world is not self-maintaining. The reason for the minor premise in general, the physical universe, all of everything, this is like everything, is highly differentiated in terms of hot and cold. So there are hot places, suns, cold places, Pluto, and the differences between these hot and cold places interact, and they interact until sameness of temperature is reached. Sameness, once it's reached, remains sameness. It cannot return to a highly differentiated state as it was before. This is called entropy. This is something students try to argue with me about, but if you Google the first law of thermodynamics, you will see matter is neither created nor destroyed. Yippee, it must be eternal, right? No, look at the second law of thermodynamics. Everything is running towards sameness, entropy, heat death of the universe. I will put a little video in the comments about the heat death of the universe. It's a reality, my friends. It's a reality. Or you can look up timeline of the heat death of the universe on Wikipedia. They have a pretty nice timeline. So all that exists is running towards sameness, meaning the suns won't be hot anymore. The Plutos won't be cold anymore. There's going to be an equilibrium, equal stasis. And it's not just that in temperature. It's that the atoms, they're highly differentiated too. There's an energy going on in the proton, neutron, electron, and atoms will not hold together anymore. There will be proton decay, photon decay, all these decay of the elements. So if matter is eternal, that decay has been going on eternally. Shouldn't it be not highly differentiated right now? Shouldn't it be like just sameness right now? So that things seem highly differentiated, fresh and new, as my husband likes to say. then it tells you that the universe had a beginning. Okay. So, the reason for the minor premise, in part. So the minor premise, remember, the material world is not self-maintaining. The sun in our solar system and all the stars in the whole universe will burn out. Now, how do you know that? Maybe someone's going to say, well, you're just asserting that. No, think about it. This is something that all people could know. This is when we say it's clear, this is one of the things that is clear. All people on the face of the earth can look outside the window right now, or if they can't see, they can go outside and feel the sunshine on their skin, right? The sun is evident to all. It is giving off heat. That is, I mean, we got the material world exists. It's not an illusion. So the sun is giving off heat and it's finite in size. You can look up at the sky and see it's about yay big. So the sun is finite in size. It's giving off heat, being finite. This process can't go on forever. Therefore, the sun and the stars will burn out. So think about it. I know you want to argue against this right now. You want to react. Don't react. Think, stop and think and go, is that true? The sun is finite. It's giving off heat. It can't do it forever, so it's going to burn out. And all the stars are like the sun, so all the stars are going to burn out. And take it to the next level. If the sun and all the stars are going to burn out and the material world were eternal, wouldn't they all be burnt out by now? But they're not. Makes me think the universe must not be eternal. Now, the materialist is going to not like that, and they're going to come up with theories to show, oh, well, maybe it's recycling. So there's an oscillating universe model that has been proposed. It's also been rejected, but it's a logical possibility, so let's think it through. Okay, the reason for the minor premise as a whole. So we had, in its part, in general, here we go. In general, reason for the minor premise. In part, the sun and the stars are going to burn out, and as a whole. So this is going to say why the whole universe can't be eternal. A materialist response has been to appeal to the Big Bang oscillating universe theory. You can Google that, read about it. Basically, it says that the universe expands from a Big Bang, goes out, and at some point begins to contract and comes back in, and it does this an infinite amount of times. There's a lot of problems with this. First, the physics doesn't bear it out. Second, why do we assume it goes out an infinite number of times? Why not 5 times? Given entropy, shouldn't it just be like dead? All right, so here's some other problems, though, bigger problems. The non-materialist reply, and the non-materialist could be a spiritual monist, a dualist, a theist, a deist, anyone who believes that the universe is not merely matter. The non-materialist reply is, one, on empirical grounds, just by looking out there, scientists using their telescopes and looking out into the universe, there's not enough matter in the physical universe for gravity to pull everything back together. This is a fact, a calculation that they've come up with. Okay, the universe is so big. If it's going to, and it's expanding. We've the Hubble telescope has been sent out. We've seen that the universe is expanding. They thought they were going to be able to calculate the rate of contraction through this telescope, and what they found is that it's not only expanding, but it's picking up speed. It's going faster and faster in its expansion. So the universe is expanding. It's going faster and faster, which means all the physical bodies are moving farther and farther away, which means you need more gravity at the center to pull those things back together. So there's not enough mass, especially at the center, to pull it all back together. Okay, that's a physics problem, right? But pretend we found a way to do that. We've like dark energy, dark matter, strange matter, whatever you want to call it. They found some way to bring everything back together. There's a logical problem. On logical grounds, the model of the Big Bang does not overcome the problem of entropy. Remember, we talked about entropy, sameness. At some point, the force that's pulling in this universe will have to equal the force that's also pushing out. So we have this expanding universe. It doesn't just halt and come back in. There are parts of the universe that are expanding while there are parts of the universe that are contracting, and you're going to have forces coming up against each other. And at that point, there will be sameness. So at some point, the force pulling in will have to equal the force pushing out. And even if you want to say, yeah, but I had a student who came up with a model, and it turns out so did Stephen Hawking, where he said, okay, pretend there are black holes at the center of every galaxy, and there are. And these black holes are gobbling up all the matter in their area, and they start to grow and like join, and there's like a super massive black hole, and now all the matter is pulled back in. I said, okay, good. That's a good logical option. Now, how do you get it to expand again? Because the matter in the black hole has been gobbled up. Apparently, it's not usable anymore in that way. So what do you do? And that's where this true vacuum to false vacuum theory comes in. So a true vacuum would be that state where there's no matter and no energy, like all the stuff that just went into that black hole. There's no matter, there's no energy. And then a false vacuum is where there is energy. And from energy, because E equals mc squared, you can get matter. So you have this state where you have no energy, and now you have energy. And there's no matter here, but because you have energy, now you can get matter. And that's where you get the universe and how you get another Big Bang. That's like science magic, if you think about it, because how do you get no energy to energy? That's like no being to being. That's being from non-being. We already said that can't happen, even if scientists dress it up in fancy theories. It can't happen. It is impossible. If someone told you being came from non-being, you should probably not engage in that conversation. Okay, so let's read through this. When the true vacuum is described as empty of matter and energy, in contrast to the false vacuum as empty of matter but not energy, the change so described involves being coming into existence from non-being. That's impossible. And again, we have not overcome the reason for the minor premise. So the reason for the minor premise is not overcome by appeal to black holes, antimatter, anti-universes, etc. So going back, we were going over this argument. If the material world were eternal, it would be self-maintaining. The material world is not self-maintaining. Therefore, the material world is not eternal. And so we're left with something else being eternal. Now, that's not all. I know, right? It gets more exciting as we go along. So we got matter exists, matter's not eternal. Now we're going to go with the argument the soul exists. Now let's talk about this. Do you have a soul? If matter is all that exists, then you don't have a soul. I think we're going to have to do a series on not just the existence of God, but what is a human? What is a human, and what is human nature? So the material monist would say that there is no soul. You are your body. We are higher evolved animals. And I'm not even sure we can say that anymore. Are we more highly evolved than other animals? We wreck our climate. We fill the oceans with medical waste. I mean, come on, animals know not to do that. So, do you have a soul? If you did, what would it be like? Would you know if you had a soul? So a material monist has to explain all phenomena in terms of matter. So what's doing the thinking? Well, your brain, right? Do you think with your brain? Have you ever thought about that? What's doing the thinking? Do I think with my brain? So this is going to be an argument that your mind is not your brain. You don't think with your brain. I'm going to let you think about that for a second. And what's doing the thinking? All right, so let's think about what is your brain. It is material, cells with nerves and neurons and neural firings. And neural firings are like electrical impulses. All of these are physical, right? But what is thinking? If you go back and look at my Retrieving Reason podcast, I talk about concepts, judgments, and arguments, which are the three acts of thought. We form concepts. Concepts either have meaning or they don't. We make judgments. The soul exists is a judgment, and it's either true or false. And then arguments. And here's an argument. I'm presenting several arguments to you today. This is what thinking is. Can we equate concepts, judgments, and arguments with physical activity in your brain? So you can measure brain activity, but can you measure thought? You can measure that a person may be thinking, but can you see their thoughts physically through some kind of brain scan? Okay, so what's in the brain are physical things. I mentioned them: nerves, neural impulses, neurons. Can we find thought there? All right, so we have a distinction between a mind and a brain. Mind is the thinking part, brain is the physical part. So here's another argument: premise, conclusion. Again, it's modus tollens. It's a valid argument. Is it sound? If all is matter, everything that exists is matter, then thinking must be motion of atoms in the brain. Why? Because everything is motion of atoms. And we've located a connection between your brain and your thoughts. I'm not saying there's no connection, by the way. I'm just saying you can't reduce thinking to atoms in your brain, or even motion of atoms in your brain. All right, minor premise. This is the controversial one. This is the one you're going to want to say, prove it. Thinking is not motion of atoms in the brain. You can't equate thought to motion of atoms in the brain. I'll give you a reason for the minor premise next. Conclusion: it is not the case that all is matter. Okay? Premise, conclusion. What is the reason for the minor premise? So here it is. The reason for the minor premise: motion of atoms can be described, and any kind of motion can be described in terms of fast or slow, straight or curved, up or down. So those are some qualities of matter, of motion, of matter and motion: fast, slow, straight, curved, up or down. None of these qualities or combination can be identified as true or false, which is an essential quality of thought. We could say meaning, truth, validity, soundness. Those are qualities of thought. The qualities of motion and the qualities of thought are not identical, so you can't say thinking is motion. For two things to be identical, they have to share the same qualities. Thought and motion do not share the same qualities, so thinking is not motion of atoms in the brain. So thinking is not motion of any kind. Thinking must be something else, and it must be somewhere else. I don't know if your soul is anywhere. All right, so here's an argument. It's a nice, pretty, simple little argument. The mind is not the brain, or the soul exists. We need to go on to get more for your soul. So here's another argument. Let's pause it there. So here's another argument. Okay, so let me give you a little background. The material monist, the one who says matter is all that exists, will say, well, we know matter exists because it is the most immediate to our experience. It's the most immediate to our perception. So I know tables exist because, tables exist. I perceive it, right? But this is one of the beautiful things about postmodernism. We have to back up. They teach us to back up and see the process of interpretation. So all of our experiences are interpreted, including our perceptions, and they're interpreted in light of our basic beliefs. So The materialist is going to say that, well, I know the physical world is there because I immediately perceive it. Well, you also already believe it exists, right? So let's get this argument. The mind or the soul exists, that you have a soul, you have a mind, you have a conscious part of you. The major premise: the most immediately known is the most certainly known. Now, the materialist would agree with that. They would say, that's true, the table is the most immediately known, so the table is the most certainly known. But the minor premise is going to say, the self is the most immediately known, not the physical world, the perceiver of the physical world. The self is the most immediately known. And then the conclusion is the self is the most certainly known. Okay, so this argument form is AAA figure 1. It's called Barbara. It's always valid. So it's a valid argument form, but is it sound? So your job is to test, is the major premise true? Is the minor premise true? Is the conclusion true? If it is, then you should believe it, because you're a rational person, right? Sorry, allergies. Okay, so let's read through this. The reason for the minor premise is based on the analysis of immediately perceived. Perception of the table is analyzed in terms of light waves, neural impulses, mental image, and self as perceiver of the mental image. All right, let me just go through this in normal people terms. So we can say, okay, I do perceive a table. All right, I have a new desk here. This is a new setup. I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a desk, okay? I can say, yes, I perceive the desk. But is it immediate perception or is it mediated perception? So is there something more immediate than that desk that I see? Yeah, there is. I have a light source that allows for me to see that desk. The light is bouncing off the surface of the desk, interacting with my optic nerve, allowing me to see the desk. So there is something more immediate than the desk. And that is the light waves. I don't see the light waves. They're that by which I see. So light waves are more immediate than the table, and they're not seen. I don't see light waves, and they're not shaped like a table. It's not like there's a table going to my eye. The light waves interact with my optic nerve, which is now sending neural impulses in my brain. So here's where your brain is involved, right? Your light's going into your optic nerve, sending signals to the brain. You have neural impulses in your brain, so we can affirm the reality of brain activity. But neural impulses also are not seen. They're not shaped like a table. And these are the last brain activity. If a surgeon were to go in and cut into my brain right now, he's not going to find a desk in there circulating around or a camera that I'm looking at. And you can't isolate neural impulses and see a table in there. So we have the brain activity. This is the physical world, right? So light, part of the physical world, optic nerve, part of the physical world, brain, part of the physical world. But we haven't yet found that table or the desk that we're looking for. It's not in my brain. So where is it? It's in the mental image. So I can close my eyes and still have a mental image of, I can have a mental image of the desk in my classroom that I haven't seen for 2 years. I have a mental image of that desk. I'm not seeing it right now. I can have a mental image of my dogs. They just left here. They're out there, but I can have a mental image of them without seeing them. So what is that? So we have light waves, neural impulses, mental image, which is more immediate than the neural impulses. But neural impulses, mental images don't perceive themselves. We need a perceiver of the mental image. And that perceiver of the mental image is I. When I say I see the table, I am the perceiver of the mental image. I am that being that is most immediate in the process of perception. So let's just read through this because I just said it all, but we're going to read the technical version. Light waves are said to be more immediate than the cause of the table that I see out here, but light waves are not seen and they're not conceived to be in the shape of the table that I see. So no table going to my eye. Neural impulses are formed from light waves interacting with the optic nerves. They are more immediate than the light waves, yet they too are not seen nor conceived to be in the shape of the table that I see. Since neural impulses are the last brain activity, one has to go beyond neural impulses and the brain to get to the table that is seen. Where is the table that is seen? It cannot conceivably be in the brain, but must be a mental image in the mind. Finally, the mental image does not perceive itself, and it changes continually, but I am immediately aware that I am the perceiver of all the mental images. I am other than the mental images, and that I know myself as consciousness itself, having no physical characteristic. This consciousness is also known as mind, self, soul, or spirit. This consciousness is so constantly present that it is not noticed without deliberate attention. So we have to stop and say, what am I as a thinking thing? And so we always have these images before us, and you can do this with all of your senses. It doesn't just have to be sight. I have coffee. I have sounds. I have visual perception. And all of these things change, but there's a being that pulls them all together into this picture that makes sense, and that I am constantly aware that I am the perceiver of. Let's call it a movie. There's a movie before me, but I'm aware that I am the one that's watching the movie. And not only that, I can interact with the movie, right? I can be a part of it. That's the self. That's the I. That's your soul. Your soul is the conscious part of you. Okay. So let's see where we're at in the larger picture here. So we've gone through matter exists, matter is not eternal, the soul exists. Oh, is your soul eternal? So we have a thinking thing, we have a conscious part of us. Is that conscious part of you something that has always existed? Now, this is something some Eastern religions would believe, that your soul is eternal and it's going through reincarnation, birth, death, rebirth, birth, death, rebirth. And maybe ultimately, life is about realizing that you are the creator of all that is, and you are trapped in this cycle of reincarnation. You need to realize that you are the one that creates this. So again, for those larger conversations, I refer you to Philosophical Foundation to go through the philosophy of Shankara and Ramanuja and even Nagarjuna in Buddhism. All right, so let's see. Is your soul eternal? I don't think so. Why not? It's pretty easy, okay? So this is a little short, beautiful argument. If the individual soul, if my soul were eternal, then how long have I been around? Eternity, no beginning, no end. I've been around forever. And if I've been around forever, how much knowledge would I have? I would have infinite knowledge. Now, there's always someone in the classroom who's like, no, wait, I do. I have infinite knowledge. So if you have infinite knowledge, why are you watching videos on YouTube to learn things? You already know it all, right? Or maybe you want to say, I do know it all, but I forgot when I got in this body. Well, then what do you need to be in this body for? Okay, so we can have more conversations about this, but here's the argument. Okay, again, it's modus tollens. If the individual soul were eternal, then it would have infinite knowledge, having been in existence for eternity. The individual soul, my soul, your soul, does not have infinite knowledge. And so the conclusion is the individual soul is not eternal. Now, sometimes I just say to my students, well, let's just look at the grade books and see who has infinite knowledge. Or if you have infinite knowledge, why don't you teach the class? Because I'm getting a little bit tired. All right. So I think it's a little bit obvious that we are growing, going through changes, learning. These are all part of being temporal. An eternal being would have infinite knowledge, all knowledge. They would not grow. Okay, so now you're like, well, I have questions about that. Maybe I'll deal with those questions when we talk about the nature of God in the next video. All right, so given all that we've just gone through, hang on, I like playing with my new buttons here. Now, here's where we're at. God the creator exists. So matter exists. No, something must be eternal. Matter exists. Matter is not eternal. The soul exists. The soul is not eternal. What we've gone through are some of the arguments against material monism, against spiritual monism, and dualism. Dualism also thinks your soul is eternal and is going through reincarnation. We could go through more of these arguments. It takes probably at least half of my class to go through the arguments, presenting and going historically presenting and going through these arguments in their context of the original philosophers. So again, if you want that, take my Philosophy 101 class at Logos College of Liberal Arts. All right. So the grand finale, the big conclusion, God the creator exists. How do we get there? Well, let's go back to this handout and look at this. Something must be eternal from number 1 above. If you agree with that, put a check mark there. Yes, I agree. Something must be eternal. What is eternal? Is either matter or spirit. Think it through. If you agree, put a check mark. Matter is not eternal from number 3 above. If you agree, put a check mark. The individual spirit is not eternal from number 5 we just went through. Check it. Therefore, some other spirit must be eternal. It's not mine, and it's not matter's eternal. Some other spirit must be eternal, and this eternal spirit we call God the creator. All right, so this is the conclusion. Something must be eternal. What is eternal is either matter or spirit. Matter's not eternal. My spirit's not eternal. So some other spirit must be eternal. And this we call God. Again, we could go through arguments in more depth, but this is what was asked for. It was stated that I'm just asserting that God exists. Here's my quick argument, rough argument for God the creator. Now, what I hope to do next time is talk about the nature of this God, because some people say, okay, so you can argue that there's a God and it's clear to reason that God exists. Sure, but who is this God? What is this God, right? So that's what we want to talk about next. Who or what is this God that theists and deists talk about? All right, thanks for joining me. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, bring your friends in on the conversation, make them, think it through with you. Philosophy is always more fun when you have a conversation with others. And so again, I ask you to join the conversation over on my locals channel. That's where I'm getting some of these questions from. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks again. Have a great day.